This week we are talking about chapters 17 through 22.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just review what we've learned so far. Anybody want to summarize what we've learned? Yes.
Wow. It's just wow. It's just like my head is just spins. I mean, the bottom line is we are responsible for us and how we treat people. It is us. It's not anything about anyone else, how anyone else has done anything. It's just all about us.
That is the truth.
And I don't know why it's so hard to keep that in mind all the time. But from reading the book, there's no one who's perfect about doing it all the time. Even these people that are training have admitted that on a daily basis, they're in that box.
Yeah.
So, not that it makes me feel better or worse. I think the thing is that you need to be aware. And when you learn things, when you're aware of something, I think then you can make a difference. So I think we probably all have known that we're only responsible for ourselves. But it is so easy to get in that box and feel that someone wronged you and you're going to wrong them back, or they ignore you, you're going to ignore them back, instead of really understanding everyone has a story. So if you really understand that everyone has a story, their own baggage, but they're all people, and they're just like you. So
I mean, to me, what you're really bringing up is to me, this is how easy it is to get into that collusion cycle. They treated me badly, so I'm going to treat them badly, and I'm justified it, I'm blaming them, and I'm justifying. And now it is really like we got together and said, listen, if you treat me badly, it'll justify you treating me badly, and we'll just keep this whole circle going, and we'll feel justified, and we can blame each other for ever in this cycle of and to me, the easiest way I've seen that is when my kids were teenagers. To me, it's like that cycle of that. It's like, and once I really understood this, there's that cycle because you can see it so clearly. And so to me, it's like just being aware of it, and to me, having the awareness of that is so critical. So, what difference does it make whether I see people as objects as people? Or as people?
or you're treating them differently, right? An object is,
Doesn't have feelings.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like this is one of the things that we're sort of, need to be aware of, is that when we are treating people like objects, we tend to be more manipulative. We tend to not really see their humanness. When we see them as people that have needs and are equally valuable as us, we tend to treat people better just automatically. And to me, that's the biggest difference there. So how do we get in the box? Or how do we start seeing people as objects?
Well, maybe your emotion gets in the way. Maybe you got hurt.
You're focused on yourself.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You're only caring about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the book say?
Oh, I don't remember. Oh, I have to look back.
I don't remember.
When you have resistance against somebody or something like that? Let me see. I don't know. I wrote the book, so hang on.
Get in the box and we start betraying ourselves.
All right, when we have the sense
Yeah.
of I should do something. Now,
Uh-huh.
I really want you to think about this in relationship to real estate. So we get in the box, or we start seeing people as objects when we have a sense that we should do something for another. Now, in the book, he uses the example of the middle of the night, their 4-month-old son was crying, and he wakes up and he says, I should have a sense to tend to the baby so my wife can sleep. And he sort of denies that And that's when the cycle of, well, my work tomorrow is important. I need to get a good night's sleep. My wife isn't being the greatest mom. She's ignoring her son's cries. And all of a sudden, our blame and self-justification kicks in. Have any of you ever had a sense that you should call past clients?
Yeah.
And you didn't do that then, what happens when you deny that sense?
Betray yourself, and you start going in your head about, well, they probably don't want to hear from me. Oh, I know that they're really busy. Maybe they're using somebody else. You know.
To me, I see this
Yeah.
exact cycle in real estate play out all the time. I mean, it's like, I swear they wrote the book for realtors. Because this is the same stories. Well, this I was tired, I wasn't in a good mood, and they probably didn't want to hear from me. They don't like it when I call. All of these things become this, and it's because we had this sense that, yeah, I probably should stay in touch with my clients. But then we deny the feeling and we just don't take the action. And when we betray ourselves, we see the world in a way that justifies our self-betrayal. To me, this is the one thing that is so important to keep, in mind. I love the story of Kate and her son. When her son was being, non-responsible, if we would have asked her, what do you want? She would have said, I want a responsible son. But when he did act responsibly, what did she want even more than his responsibility?
She wanted him to be wrong. She wanted him to make a mistake.
She wanted to be justified in her frustration with her own son. And to me, this is what we need to do. So when we get into this, self-justifying behavior, we need the other people, we need our clients, other agents to actually act badly.
Mm-hmm.
And we do everything that actually makes it worse. We don't communicate. We attack, we get angry, we get frustrated. And notice we're just feeding into the cycle. And so one of the key things is that we need to be aware that we are treating people as objects when we have an attitude of blame. The second blame starts coming into our brain. Blaming a client, blaming the lender, blaming another agent. That's a good indication that we are in this cycle. And this is why we like mistreatment. And this is really the essence of collusion. Somebody blames us, so we can blame them, and we get involved in this, whole cycle of it. And yes?
I have a question. Everything that I've read, everything that you're saying now seems to lead to the fact that the default is to be in the box. That seems to be natural human behavior that we all seem to find ourselves with the blame and the justification and all of that, the self-betrayal seems to be the natural state of things, and we have to elevate ourselves above that. And that's what I was going to ask you about earlier, but now would be a good time. This collusion, this whole behavior seems to be the default. Why is that?
See,
Why do we have to try so hard to get out of it?
I don't think it's our default. I think human beings, by the nature, if we understand that we get into the box by self-betrayal, I think that if we just get in touch with honoring those intuitive feelings, our natural personality or natural humanness is that we are going to do for others, that we find joy and get great satisfaction in helping others. Just like, the example, Bud is in bed, he has that natural intuition, I should take care of my son so my wife can sleep. That's our natural presence. It's when we betray that natural desire to help other people. Now, I think, again, this is, beyond the scope of this book, and this becomes opinions. If, as we were growing up, we were helped by our parents to honor those feelings, I think our natural humanness would be to help. Now, this comes from a few other books. One of them that I love is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And he says our natural state of human beings is to see the humanness and reach out and help others. But he says that in a society where we need good workers that do as they're told without questioning, that doesn't always work well. And we have, through socialization, been taught to repress our natural feelings of helpfulness so that we do what we're told without question. Starting with, going back to, well, if you're a good man, you're going to fight for the crown or fight for your family, or, you aren't going to question why. You're going to put your life on the line. You're going to deny your own needs in helping others. I think our natural state of humanness is actually a state of goodness, where
That's
we
the
want
evolved.
to.
I would agree with that. That's the evolved. But there's a lizard brain here that is thinking self-preservation. To me, that sort of comes first, and in our evolved state, working in a community for the good of the community and survival, then is where we are.
Well, in whether it's a natural state or the evolved state, to me, I think it's easy to let the lizard brain take over. Especially if we're tired, or we have some fear, or we haven't really gotten in touch with that, and we can start this, cycle very easily. Now, one of the things that you brought up earlier that I thought was very interesting is, and this is one of the examples that he sort of talks about in the book, is what happens when somebody else puts you in the box. So he was thinking about calling his wife, and called his wife and said, she whipped me into the box.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the end conclusion of that story?
I don't
I remember.
It's their fault that you're in the box, no matter what it is. that
Well,
you
he
do.
definitely said she put me in the box.
But he took
How do you deal with somebody who's putting you in the box?
Well, he didn't take responsibility for that.
He didn't. He said she did it.
Yeah. I mean, plus he was at a different space and he expected her to go where his space was. I mean, that's kind of what I read into it, right? And she didn't respond exactly like he thought, so well, it doesn't work.
So here's the question. Can somebody else put you in the box?
Well, we think they can. We blame them.
Trigger us, but we can control that, but we react, we don't take control. So that's what happens all day long. We do something, instead of reacting, we react. And then we lose it, then we go in the box, we do all those things, and one thing leads to another thing. And then the day after, we're like, okay, today I'm going to be in control, I'm not going to react. But again, that brain, that being, doing it over and over again, so you're going to react. So it's very hard to take control of your mind and not reacting, just acting.
And it's definitely a practice. And that's why I think the book talks about the fact that to some extent we all can get into the box, or we can all get into the cycle. But the more we work on it, the more we think about it, the easier it becomes to not go there.
And I guess that's what's going on in my mind, is if my primitive behavior is to be that selfish, unevolved person that looks after my own welfare, and somebody puts me in the box, then my immediate instinct is to self-preservation, as opposed to what I'm learning and have learned through my life and conditioned to think beyond that and think of the other person in the way that we're accepting here in this conversation. But the natural state would be to go back into the self-preservation. The primitive state, I guess, is what they call
I do think that the primitive brain, or the reptile brain that is purely acting on instinct, can come in. But the good news is that I do believe we have the capacity to evolve to a point where our conscious brain and our decisions about who we want to be become an impact. Now, we've already talked a little bit about this. To me, how this impacts us in relationship to our prospecting calls. This also is one of the things that I talked a little bit about last week, is that when agents are working on their marketing, if they're thinking about their clients as objects to manipulate, their marketing takes on a different tone. And I see this, and this is also why everything we do, has an impact. So, which brings us to the chapters we're talking about this week. How do we get out of the box? So, how do we overcome this tendency to respond from that reptilian brain? And I really like the way they talk about this, in that they talk about the things that don't get you out of the box to start with. And it's always interesting to me, the first thing we tend to do is to try and change others. Has any of you tried to change your spouse, your kids? And how well does that work?
Oh, no.
I'm working on Lisa right now. She's my project.
So this is one of the great ahas that we have to realize. The first thing, if we are trying to change somebody, that's probably a good indication to our own selves that, one, we need to evolve.
Right.
We are treating or thinking about that other person as an object. And we're also in judgment. Why would you try and ever change somebody?
Sometimes it's because of their own good. You can see that there's something that they, especially your kid or your spouse, you care so much that you can see things that they don't, and then you're trying to help. It's not always for me, or for, it's just trying to be, especially for your kid, it's always for them. I don't care for me, I just want him to be happy and successful and everything, so. And don't do mistakes that we did.
So, would it be better, would you have more success in helping them live a happy, productive life by trying to change them, or to approach them from totally non-judgment and just live a perfect example of life yourself?
Sure, that's the best way to do it.
Because when you're changing them, there's a degree of self-serving in there. Because you want them to change so you don't have to deal with the aggravation, or that you can be more receptive to their behavior.
And what's really behind it is when we're trying to change somebody, we have put ourselves, in my opinion, in the position of God. We have judged. And whether that's from benevolence or non-benevolence, I have found that whenever people sense that we're trying to change them, one of the things that I found that all of us want is this thing called autonomy. I mean, and it's one of the fundamental sort of needs of human beings. You see it at very young ages. How many have ever told a 2-year-old no? They want autonomy. Now, they can't call it autonomy at 2, but they want to make their own decisions. They want to be feeling like in control of their lives. And so any manipulation or any attempt to try and change others overtly tends to always come with a negative consequence. We can also try and cope with other people and say, well, I can put up with it. But it tends not to work very well. We can also just leave or shut down. We can withdraw. And a lot of people do this. And does that actually solve anything?
No,
No.
because you just take yourself with you.
But it depends on how important that person is in your life, if it's a maid or family or whatever. But if it is a colleague and associate, then the withdrawal is easy as that.
Sometimes it is. It's an easier path. It's not mostly the most productive path, but it can be easier. In fact, most of these at times can be easier than actually dealing with the problem.
Mhm.
We can also communicate about it, but I see that communication, if I'm communicating with you and you sense that I see you as an object to being manipulated, how well does that communication go?
Not well.
So communication tends not to work. We can also read books on sales techniques, negotiation techniques, on, relationships techniques. And this is one of those things that for a long time I was always frustrated by. And coming from a father who's a psychologist, having read a ton of books on psychology, my undergraduate degree is in psychology. I tried to master all the psychological techniques. And I thought, why aren't these techniques working for me? This technique should get my wife to fall in line. And yet, no matter what skills or techniques we are using, if people still sense they're being manipulated or that we aren't seeing them as human beings, it tends to not work. We can even change our behavior. We can try and treat people differently. We can use different things. But again, if we're still seeing them as a problem, it tends not to work. And to me, this is one of the most interesting things about the book is that, he talks about all these things that don't work. So how do we actually get out of the box? And the funny thing is that we just have to stop resisting their humanity. We just have to see every human being as a person. And that's shockingly hard, but it gets easier the more you work at it. So how do you start seeing people as people? Any ideas?
Try to understand them, just not just their behavior, what's behind that, where they come from.
Accepting their faults.
So, but again, when you're just meeting somebody, are you assuming they have faults?
We usually judge people even if we don't know it.
So, if we see a homeless person sitting on the side of the road, when we just see them there, what do we just naturally assume?
They've got problems.
Do we naturally judge them?
Yes.
No, I don't judge them.
I do.
poor guy,
That's still.
he ended up here, maybe he didn't have enough skills, he ended up here because he couldn't stand up. That's why he ended up there. So I feel sorry for him. I don't judge him.
Not it.
So feeling sorry for him is still a judgment.
Okay, that's your judgment.
Because you already had a story, you put a story to that person.
Yeah, I do.
That's judging.
So, and it wasn't in this book, but one of the books that by a Franciscan monk that says, "Why am I so afraid to tell you who I am?" He says that as you just run across human beings walking by on the street, driving by in the car, he says, if you can just look at every single person that you see and just mentally look at them for a second and say, I'm sending you love. And just mentally try and emotionally connect with every person without any judgment, without making any assumption. He said it will lead you on a path to being much less judgmental and being open to the humanness of others. And I will tell you, I constantly find this very, very helpful. I bike ride pretty much every day, every weekend, and everybody I drive by on my bike, I mentally make the effort to say, I'm sending you love. Now, my wife and I have been riding our bikes in Huntington Beach for probably 25 years now. We are amazed. There's probably 20 people that have stopped us over the years to introduce themselves to us because they see us all the time. And to me, it's like, I really do think that part of it is, we're consciously making an effort to send them acceptance. And I know that for me, I used to do the same bike ride, and I used to judge people. I'd say, she's overweight, she shouldn't be out here. And the more I've worked on those types of things, the less those judgments pop into your brain. So a couple of things that have helped me to get outside of the box. First of all, ask yourself, am I placing blame? Am I blaming the other person for anything in this situation? For the way they're reacting, for anything? And I guarantee you, the second you notice that you're blaming them, you're not seeing them as a human being. And we're judging them. So to me, it's like, if you can just notice that you're blaming and say, well, yes, say, and now just accept them as a human being, it's easier to now have them transform in front of you. And it really does take a second. You can go from being angry and upset with them to saying, okay, they're just another human being having problems. Just like me. Also, if you're justifying any action that you're having that is not a loving action, well, they deserved this. Just this weekend, my wife got on my case. We went out to breakfast on our bike ride and got absolutely horrible service. It took 30 minutes when we ordered our food to get it. When it came, it was cold. And my wife, I said, I'm only going to leave a $2 tip. And my wife looked at me and she said, so that's the person you want to be? She's so good at it.
Ouch. Ouch.
No, I'm with you, Greg.
Is that the person you want to be?
So I think the bill was like $16. And she said, don't you want to be the person that leaves a $20 tip to change their day?
That's pressure.
Uh-huh.
I said, oh, yes.
So.
Did you?
I did, I left the $20 tip.
Oh my gosh, woo!
Good for you.
Did it make you feel better?
It did, and it took me a while to get there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like this was more of an exercise for you than it was for the waitress.
Well, it was, and it's like, I thought, okay.
That's a dishonest way of praising yourself, though.
So it's like, to me, this is where we have to decide what's the person that I want to be.
Yeah.
No matter how people treat me. And this is the one that comes back to, you know, treat people the way you want to be treated, not the way they deserve to be treated. And once we really get that, well, that's when we realize that nobody can put us in the box.
Can you say that
That's a
again?
great
Can you
phrase.
say the sentence before?
Treat people the way we want to be treated, not the way they deserve to be treated in our brains.
Dale Carnegie talks about it the same way.
I mean, Dale Carnegie, the Buddha, Gandhi,
And
I mean, it's basically in all of them is that, you know, Gandhi says the only way to break the cycle of hatred or violence or negative
Thank you.
retribution is to meet hatred with love.
I'm gonna put that as number 43 on my why I love myself list.
Yeah.
All right, then I always find it helpful to ask, am I focusing on myself or the other person? And it's, to me, those things tend to pop me out of looking at people as an object and get me to act much more intelligently or in a way that's congruent with my own values. I also ask, why am I feeling frustrated or angry? And as soon as I get in touch with why I'm feeling frustrated or angry, I almost always find that it's a judgment of the other person. And then I ask, is this the way I want to feel? This is one of the things that Jim taught me. He said, you know, if you're not feeling the way you want to feel, tell a different story. What can I tell myself differently so I feel better about the situation? Now, in the book, they talk about some other things, because these aren't directly from the book. They talk about, think about the people that you have a good relationship with that are not outside of the box, that you don't have, you're not seeing as, you know, an object, you're seeing as a person. And if you can think about that other person, it's easier to now see the person in front of you as a human being. You got a comment? You
No,
were just,
I was just, yeah,
All right.
sorry.
so to me, the more we can work on this, it's seeing people as people, being aware of their humanness, the more we can help things go right consistently across everything. So, questions and comments, thoughts about how we can apply this?
How can we just do it? Because it's we understand and it's easy to, get the concept, but it's not easy to actually behave that way and live with it, especially our job. If these people are, I'm not judging, but it's usually opposite that. So agent to agent relationship is usually, at each other, and it's very hard to bring the other party on your game and not their game, which is usually the aggressive game.
And I agree with that, and it's interesting in that one of the things that I used to always get frustrated with, well, why are people so difficult or so? And what I've come to now is sort of weird. It's my own justification, my own mental construct, is that every time there's a difficult client, agent, I'm always grateful for that. Because I think that's why I have a job. That's why I get paid. So to me, it's like every time you have a difficult client, you think, oh, that is why I'm getting a real estate commission. And that's why it's a pretty decent commission. Not because it's about real estate, it's about dealing with their
Craziness.
That's also why I believe realtors will be disenfranchised by the internet.
Say that again.
That's why I believe realtors will never be disenfranchised by the internet.
Because they can't argue with the internet, or they can't.
No,
They
you
can't reason with the
can
internet.
help them
Internet
deal
can't
with their
The
own
internet can't emotionally
Mhm.
calm them enough to make a good decision. To me, that's the great goal.
Yeah.
How many of your clients get emotionally distraught in a real estate transaction?
Everyone.
Oh, yeah.
So understand, that's your role. You are the emotional stability. And once you sort of understand and accept that role, their craziness will not have as much effect on you because you won't take it so personally.
It's our job to help them deal with that. Make a good decision.
It's when we take it personally that we get ourselves into trouble.
Yeah.
Instead
Okay.
of just saying,
When.
it's okay. They're going off the deep end. And then you can sort of watch it with an interest and compassion.
I had a client who bought a $2 million house, and we were at the point where they had to go sit with escrow and sign all the documents. And this guy was an executive at Broadcom, and she was an educator. So they had the world together. And yet during that process of signing the documents, they both said, we're just a couple of babies, aren't we, Dieter? We're so sorry. But it elevated me thinking, wow, I am the rock here for them
Yeah.
during this particular process. So I'm their guide. So it changed the way I look at things. I always thought I was subservient to my clients. Now I changed it to where I'm the guide through this very difficult emotional process for my clients. So I changed the words that I was using, that I get to take care of them rather than I have to take care of them, kind of thing, using that language.
Yes.
And
I get-
psychologically, that mental change makes such a huge
That's
difference.
such a difference. Yeah.
You know, and sometimes when you're thinking about these things, sometimes it does seem like it almost is semantics. But the reality is that our emotional life is based on the stories we're telling ourselves. It is semantics.
Our self-talk, right.
And so to me, that's, little distinctions like that where we truly understand we are their emotional stability and guide during those difficult times. And think about the difficult situations, decisions you've made, how valuable having somebody that is there just as a sounding board and a stability and somebody that can emotionally calm you is to help you get to the next step. So other ways that you think you can apply this and make it part of your daily life?
Since one of the nice things about labeling something, labeling a behavior, is that now it's identifiable. So if I see myself having a behavior that puts me in the box, when I try to go out of the box, or if I find it, that's the self-betrayal behavior, whatever, now it's got a label. And then that way I can consciously know this is my behavior, and what's the reason for that behavior? And many times I find my behavior is that self-preservation, to keep myself from being hurt possibly. So I withdraw and move that person out of my life, or those people out of my life, because I want my world to be harmonious and peaceful. So if I put labels on everything, then I can know that my behavior is such that I need to alter it. Therefore, if I find myself being judgmental of somebody and it's a way of praising myself, then I know that's a label. And so then I'll alter my reaction to the way I'm naturally feeling.
All right.
That's the way I would use it.
And I do think that when we label it and we look for those things, now we can tell ourselves an emotionally different story, and it allows us to be much more emotionally level. We can control and manage our own emotions elsewhere. A very interesting exercise that I've found very helpful is, Robin's big on writing the 100 things you love about yourself. One of the seminars I went to a long time ago said, I want you to write down the 25 things that are the worst things that people could say about you. What are the 25 things that you are most afraid of people saying about you, judging you? And then he said, write them down, and then ask, why does that bother you so much? And what you really come to a realization is that, gosh, I am shockingly vain about how I think other people see me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I know.
Oh my gosh, like they would
Remember
even
when
care.
Jason had that moment where he said, I'm not that important.
Yeah, right.
Remember?
Yes.
That's exactly what you're getting at, right?
No. And
Yeah.
once you sort of get that realization, and then realize, well, and the whole purpose of the exercise is that eventually he came to the point in the seminar, it said, listen, what other people think of you is absolutely none of your business.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's their judgments, their stuff. So why would you even listen to it? And in Marshall Rosenberg's book, Nonviolent Communication, he says one of the keys to happiness is to never listen to what other people think. He said if you get in the habit of not even listening or hearing what other people think, he says it's important to listen to ask how they feel, but stay in touch with the feelings, not the thinking behind the feelings, because those will always affect you in a negative way.
Okay, that's a really good one.
Well, you know, here's my feeling. All those things are great bumper stickers, they're great posters. The reality is we've had 40 years of conditioning, and then you might have an aha moment where you suddenly realize that you can be flawed. This is my sharing with you, that I can be flawed and people will still like me, but I've been conditioned my whole life that myself, my image to others has to be near perfect. I've been conditioned to be that way. And I would read certain things and then, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and then 5 minutes later I would forget it because my natural condition is coming into play. Then every once in a while something significant happens when I'm available to be taught. And the key thing is whenever I'm not that important, right? I'm not that important. Otherwise I would have never done that video that you and I did, right?
Oh,
And put it out there unedited because it's flawed. It's
Oh,
clearly flawed. And then
we were forced.
and then I saw the poster that said, oh gosh, something about delayed perfection. Delayed perfection. It's better to have something flawed than delayed perfection, is what the whole thing was. So what happens is that I'm receptive to those things at certain points in my life. When I was 32, forget it, I'm cool. I don't be bothered with all that stuff. My life is good, right? So it's very interesting as we go through at what point in our lives and our experiences are we receptive to this seminarian kind of.
Well, I definitely think it does require some receptivity. I mean, there's 116 people in this office. They were all invited.
Yeah.
And you guys showed up.
Right.
So to me, it's like, I know for me personally, having discussions about it, thinking about it, makes a difference. So to me, it's like that's part of it is keeping it in your forefront in your mind. That's why this is also one of the books I try and read every year, just to keep on track mentally. In my how am I doing in this, and it's being that awareness. And if collectively we can help each other, remind each other, have conversations about it, then we can apply it a lot more. I mean, to me, for those of you that are in the accountability program, ask each other, how are you doing on, staying out of the box? Now, I also, the Arbinger Institute that wrote this, in their latest book, they call it an inward mindset and an outward mindset. And I actually find that terminology, I think, works better than being in the box or out of the box. Is your mindset internally focused on you, or is it externally focused on the person outside? And I actually like that terminology better than the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You oriented is the way I label that. You oriented.
Yeah. So, to me, and this all comes from the underpinnings of this come from an interesting Jewish philosopher by the name of Martin Buber. And he wrote some interesting books. I think one of his, I or Thou. Am I seeing the world from my perspective, or am I seeing it from an external perspective? But I've only read that book once, and it was a little beyond my scope. So.
It's time to read it again.
Yeah, you might be in a different place that can accept it better now, Craig.
Adam, you've been awfully quiet. You're very
Oh,
articulate.
he's got some exciting stuff going on.
What's going on in your mind about what you've heard today?
Wow, I like it. I got a few different thoughts. I mean, it brings me back to the question: is it nature or is it nurture? Are we naturally who we are, or are we nurtured into who we're supposed to become? I think we fight that battle every single day. Especially I know with me, my own personality, my own experiences. I always tend to let those play out into who I am today. Sometimes me 20 years ago comes out. That's not so exciting. So I think getting into this business, I was looking for some type of change in my life, and I think being able to come in, God, I feel like brought me to this office with this team and these people to really start to develop the person I'm supposed to be. I've got a lot on my mind about this stuff. It's all good stuff.
So, a couple of things sort of along this nature versus nurture path is that we probably all got born with some genetics, but I really encourage all of you to read The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. And
Do
the
you
Bible,
remember who wrote it?
The biology of
belief,
belief by,
Bruce Lipton.
I can't even remember the title.
I know.
And it's a book that shows all the current research that really shows our genetics have much less impact than we ever imagined.
It's just what we're learning, what we,
That's
What?
the issue, right?
And that mentally, we can actually change our genetics.
yeah, I will totally believe that.
I
Wow.
used to.
What, now you think?
I'm in a whole different world now.
So it's a very interesting book. To me, he's a genetic scientist. Very interesting read that gets you to really think about the impact of genetics and the impact that our mind has on those genetics is pretty amazing. Then, if we really start to think about, okay, we have a lot of control over this, here's the one thing that most of us never do. Most of us never sit down and consciously write an effort. Think, what is the person that I want to be? What's the type of person that I want to be? That's our decision. If we actually sit down and write out, here's the person I want to be, here's the values I want to have, the beliefs I want to have, we can actually create those. If we don't sit down and consciously decide what we want, we are always going to default to the programming we've had in the past. My experience is that it's hard to figure out what kind of a person you really want to be. But on the things that I've really decided, these are the things that I want to be, I have been able to make those a very strong part of my value system. But it consciously took a lot of time to figure out what it was that I wanted. Einstein said the major reason most people fail is they don't know what they are trying to accomplish. He said if you're clear on what you're trying to accomplish, everything comes into play. He said that he believes that even his ability to think grew once he decided that he wanted to become a great thinker. So if you go back and you understand Einstein's history, he was bad at school, was not a remarkable student anywhere through college, and he said once he made the decision that he wanted to become a great thinker, that he wanted to be the ability of that, and he said his decision to become a great thinker, and he had another practice, and even you know what his other practice was every day, that he says was a huge impact on his ability to create value. Every day, since he was like 25, and he said he did this religiously, every day he physically wrote down 100 things that he was grateful for in life.
Every day, 100
Every
days.
day.
Oh my gosh.
He said, I was grateful for all the people around me that influenced me and people in the past. He said, I was always looking for a way to be grateful for the influence of the people around me. And he said, the only way I could keep that in my mind was to physically write it down. Now, this is one of those things where it doesn't seem that hard. Everybody could do it. People don't. So those little things that make a big difference there. So part of what's also going to help us apply this is Robin's going to talk about the 4 agreements. And to me, those 4 agreements, if you apply them to using leadership and self-deception, will have a huge impact.
Oh, yeah.
So next week, we're going to finish up the book. So I think it's chapter 22 to 24. And there's a little chapter on how to apply this. And then Robin's going to start the 4 agreements. So by Miguel Ruiz. So I would buy the book.
And we're starting the 4 agreements in 2 weeks then?
We are going to start the 4 agreements. I don't know the exact date.
Okay.
When I have a chance to talk with Robin today, we'll get an exact date on when
Okay.
she's going to do it.
All right.
She's,
Miguel
Miguel
Luis?
Ruiz.
Oh, Ruiz.
But if you just go to Amazon and type in the 4 agreements, he's written a bunch of books. He wrote the 4 agreements, the 5th agreement, the Mastery of Love, and a variety of other things. But the 4 agreements was his first book, and I still think it actually is probably the clearest at getting his core philosophy or points of view there. And if you can keep those 4 agreements in mind, it really has a huge application in so many different things. The other thing is, as we start going through some of these books, try and tie them together. I found that you will get greater value in making them connect with other types of things. Instead of just saying, that's a standalone book. It's like, so to me, the 4 agreements and leadership and self-deception have a lot of overlap. They're dealing with the same things, just coming at it from a different perspective. All right, any closing comments, takeaways from today?
Great thing to practice.
All right,
Yeah.
practice, practice, practice.
It's also good.
I'm still struggling with the $20 tip. Because I keep thinking of rewarding good behavior, and then I'm thinking, wait, what is it? So I'm still struggling with that. As far as service industry.
So this is one of the things that Wayne Dyer talks about. He says, if you're getting bad service, the first thing to ask is, what did I do to attract bad service? And the next thing to ask is, what can I do to change the emotional state of my server? And as I was driving home, I realized I should have been more proactive. I could tell the server was not having a great day, and I didn't respond as a human. I actually, as I was driving home, I felt guilty that I let their
Bad day or whatever, yeah.
go without my help. I know I could have changed their attitude if I would have engaged. If I would have just looked at them and said, gosh, I sense you're having a tough morning. Is there anything I can do to help? Just giving them a little bit of empathy, I know would have changed that. Because I've done that in the past and it always has a huge impact. And so, it got me down that path of, gosh, not being the person I want to be.
Yeah, right. I love that.
Pissed off, right? So you passionately gave him the 20, and that was it, yeah.
So, yeah, those are the things that start going up.
But
Well, hi there. Welcome back.
Hey, hi.
There's no parking. I was like, that was because there's so many awesome pages. I'm like, I will walk. I brought flats. I'm prepared. I feel like Mr. Rogers. Did anyone ever remember Mr. Rogers?
Sure, in the
Wearing shoes.
neighborhood.
Yeah, so my heels are in my purse.
And your sweater?
And I don't have my
Yeah, your
sweater.
sweater,
Yeah, I
right.
don't have my sweater. How was it this morning? What did you guys?
Fantastic.
Yeah. What was the subject?
Father Greg led us down a good path.
Good. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, philosophy.
And they are excited about the 4 agreements coming up?
It's really good. Did you tell them? I thought maybe like after the secret, the power. When did you tell them about the power?
I didn't.
How did you like it?
I did.
Yeah, it's an amazing. Have you guys ever heard the book The Secret?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you haven't, like, one you'll need to get it anyway. But it's sort of an extension of that, and it's called The Power. But it'll transform every relationship. It's funny. It reminded me of a lot of things I already do, but kind of intensifies it. It'll get you on the right path where you'll attract everything. How's your escrow going there?
Oh.
Is it still an escrow?
Still in escrow.
Okay, well, if it was a party, they'd call it a party. It's escrow.
That is perfect. I'm gonna use
I
that.
need to sit you down. It's good to have when you go into escrow what to say to your client. And I always tell them, like, I just want to let you know, I'm gonna get you through this process, but they call it escrow for a reason. They don't call it a party, you know, so it's not gonna be like this fabulous fun thing. So yeah, right?
That is so perfect. I'm gonna use that within 10 minutes. I'm gonna use
Yeah.
that same line.
Don't put expectations on it. Yeah, just make an agreement with yourself. You're not going to lose your mind over the escrow.
That's the learning.
So many lessons.
That's funny. So many lessons. Yeah. Are you learning a lot?
I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
For sure.
And every escrow is different. They're not the same.
Oh, I know. Some of them are so great, too. Some of them you're like,
Every.
never.
Yeah, like this one, I'm going, you know what? I think Nordstrom's is calling me, like, to
Right.
go work there.
Yeah. Either that or reach out there and you gotta do your thing. Yeah. So it's like you'll understand once you have a few more escrows, you'll understand why I do yoga, why I meditate, why I read books. Like something has to get me out of that mindset.
Or go to the movies.
Yeah, something. But I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll get
No,
it.
you're not-
Yeah,
yeah,
but before
We were
you
just
leave,
wrapping up.
Okay, cool.
Can you, I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around the week next week. So next week, there's 2 days that, there's that,
Script practice?
no, at the center.
Yeah, the team building.
The team
Team
building
class.
thing. So
Okay.
that's
So we'll
Sunday.
figure out the schedule with, because I was going to sit down with Greg today and see what it is so it doesn't interfere with anything you guys are doing. We'll figure that out today.
So, okay, so we'll figure out if next week we're finishing up the book with you at 9, because that starts at 10. So unless we come early or.
One, I just want to get you enrolled in the process of actually getting the book, and I think I
Oh,
have
but
a
we're just-
PDF
Well,
on
we're
it
finishing
too.
this book first.
Perfect.
So, and then you're gonna start with
The 4
4
agreements.
agreements, and that'll be, will that be a Monday, or will you pick another day? I mean, are we having Mondays with Greg?
You'll still always have your Mondays with Greg as long as Greg wants to do it.
Okay.
We're gonna do it. I think you decided maybe lunchtime was better, like make it like a lunch and learn thing.
Yeah,
where
that seemed
people-
like.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll send you guys a schedule and we'll take it. But it's so trust it. You'll like your whole life will grow. Because I just do it chapter by chapter and I get everyone involved and.
So
it's
you'll
pretty
just have
cool
another,
process.
you don't know what day of the week you're gonna do it?
Not yet, we'll decide today. Yeah. Because I gotta go through, while I was gone, I really wasn't gone. But while I was gone, every thing my schedule was loading up, especially this week, and so I'm trying to figure out what corporate hasn't put on my schedule.
Because you're like, it's already full.
Yeah, and where am I gonna be today? You know,
Because it looked like on Thursday you're gonna have a script.
so I'm
Maybe
doing
before
that to get the meetings to start on time. It's a trick.
But they already made a commitment that
Yes.
they will be on time for the 4
Yeah.
agreements.
I didn't mean to laugh, yes.
You do need to be on time because it'll be on my schedule and I will have to start and stuff because I'll have meetings before and after usually.
Okay.
So script practice is really good. It's always going to start in the morning, but I'll give you guys a script and then I'll have you rehearse it, but it'll be so you'll see how it can float. It's so we did it at the last company, and I would do objection handles with people. I don't know if they still did or not, but they did script practicing every morning. And when I got to work, I would go in and I would quickly do a role play with someone so they could see it, and I would do an objection handle, and then we would start our morning class. And we did that almost every day. So it was just one of those things. But they were already rolling. But that's how you get to 105 units a month
I'm
in
in.
an office. Yeah. You just
Yeah,
gotta have that consistency.
That started at 8.
Yeah, 8:15 or
8:15.
something,
8:50.
or 8, whatever. You would tell us 7:30, you know, we'll get here at 8. But I'm just joking. But Greg, and then so we're supposed to do script practice with you on Wednesday, but we've changed it to the listening presentation for the last couple of weeks.
Yes, so yeah, right now we've got a lot of volunteers for the,
For like the next 4 weeks.
yeah, so it's,
How is Greg while he's gone? I'm glad to see he's still alive and still smiling.
He was
Oh
fantastic.
my god, the poor guy. There was
So
one day where I was
fantastic.
just nonstop. I was like, I was like, so I don't know. I had my other friend forward it to him. I'm like, I don't even know what happened. I was like, oh, I feel so sorry for you. The first day I was gone, he's like, oh my god, how do you like? I was like. Because I feel like I told you. I got nonstop phone calls. Yeah.
I know, but you
You
did
did great.
such a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, just, you know, and I knew you had more on your platter. You know, I kind of saw you more because you were running upstairs and running downstairs and, you know, getting with people and stuff. And I just, you know, I'm so glad that there's a partnership to take some of the, I don't know how you guys do it with the two of you, but when one of you has to do it all, it's just gotta be like, oh yeah.
Well, sometimes they make them think I'm not here. I'm like, no, I'm here. I go, I'm the caged animal up in the house.
Yeah.
And they're like with the catapult coming in, like left and right. Yeah.
but I'm gonna return the favor here very
Yeah, he's one on vacation. I looked at my schedule. I was like, it's COVID. It's COVID. I was like, oh my god.
It'd be
Yeah.
easy on you.
Yeah, I was like, oh god.
Well, you
you're
did
so-
great,
did.
Greg, because you had 2 meetings with us. You had Tuesday and Wednesday.
And the Thursday meetings.
And Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah,
And
we
the
had 3
trainings.
meetings. Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it was and those are just where I saw you. I mean, it's like you just, and then he called me was that on Friday afternoon on your way home
Friday
from
evening, yes.
work? And he called me, he goes, I'm just calling because I didn't get a call from you to find out what was going on with your escrow.
I know,
I'm like,
he's so good.
Are you kidding me? Because I had it on my mind that I was gonna call him all day. I was thinking this. But I just didn't get around to it, and I, you know, just didn't really want to burn him. But since he was calling me with it, I was like, whatever. But it was like, how sweet of him to even remember.
And he was going non-stop where I was going. And you don't, like, the things you guys don't know is what's funny. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my god, this happened.
Yeah.
No.
All right, well, you guys need to get to work.
Yeah, yeah.